Welcome to my program, Depression Hurts. I'm Dr. Joe Allen of the New Hope Ministries. I'm a professionally certified pastoral counselor with some 40 years in God's ministry. My headquarters is the Cedar Grove Baptist Church in Panama City, Florida, where my good friend and pastor, Reverend Charles Key, is at the helm, and he does a wonderful job. I've known him for 35 years. My calling is to aid people with the good news that depression does not have to hurt. My prayer is next 30 minutes, you'll come away with a new attitude of hope, joy, and happiness. I've written 3 books on psychology, especially the depression disease. The books are available online, so just sit back, relax, and you just might come away a new person. Today we're going to talk about depression among ministers. Are you a minister of the Lord and find yourself in the darkness of major depression? You say, well, I have news for you. The news that you're trying to pawn off is that you're a Christian, pardon me, and you can't get depressed. Well, I have news. You're not Superman. It's time you get that in your train of thought. Anybody is capable of being depressed. Major depression can hit anybody. Maybe you're an easy target for the fiery darts of the devil. Old Slewfoot takes great pleasure in seeing you locked up in your mind, so depressed you can't even speak. The deceiver would have you to believe a lie. That lie is that there's no hope for you and you're going to go absolutely crazy. Satan gets the victory when you listen to him. The subtitle to this message is Silent Suffering, Pastors and Depression. What kind of personal plan would cause a 42-year-old pastor of a church to abandon his family, his calling, and even life itself? Members of a church in another state are asking that question right now. What happened to our pastor, you say? He's depressed. That's what happened. Those who counsel pastors are Christian culture, especially Southern evangelists, creates the perfect environment for depression. Pastors suffer in silence. Occasionally the result is unthinkable. Occasionally. Experts say clergy suicide is a rare outcome to a common problem. Christians in the Carolinas are soul searching after a spat with suicide by their pastor. That's so sad. So sad. In addition, September suicides, 2 years left over in Carolinas, attempted suicide continued. And 3 in South Carolina. Succeeded, all in the last 4 years. Being a pastor, a high-profile, high-stress job with nearly impossible expectations can send one down the road that there's no return from, to depression. According to pastoral counselors, we set the bar so high that many pastors cannot achieve it. Down the road to depression, according to the counselors. Suicide attempts by pastors are so sad, as I said. Being a pastor is really a high-stress job. Most counselors and psychologists, Christian ones, interviewed for this article agreed depression among clergy is at least as prevalent as the general population. As many as 12% of men and women will experience major depression and maybe at least attempt to take their own lives. So sad. The American Medical Association, and I'm quoting, the likelihood of major depression during their lifetime, according to this study, when 4 pastors are depressed and take their lives, a professor of psychology and neuroscience at Baylor University in Waco, Texas. But anxiety and depression in the pulpit are marked higher in the last 5 years. What's going on? Depression. The current economic crisis has caused many of our pastors to go into major depression. Besides the recession's strain on church budgets, depressed pastors increasingly go into depression. Nearly 2 out of every 3 depressed people don't seek treatment. They think they're Superman, but they're not. According to studies by the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, case counselors say even fewer depressed ministers get treated because of their career, social stigma, and spiritual faith. They believe they're not supposed to have these kinds of thoughts. Stanford is the source of the studies. Clergy do not talk about it because it violates their career fields. They're afraid how their flock will look upon them. They believe they're not supposed to have those kinds of thoughts. Social stigma. Society still places a stigma on mental illness, but Christians make it worse. He said, by the over-spiritualization, depression, and other disorders, dismissing them as a lack of faith. He said, over-spiritualizing, if there's such a thing. I never heard of that before, but it exists, I guess. Depression and other disorders, dismissing them as a lack of faith or a sign of weakness. Polite Southern culture adds its own taboo against talking about something as personal as mental health. Something as personal as mental health, notes Scoggin. The result is a culture of avoidance. You can't talk about it before it happens. And you can't talk about it after it happens, said Monty Hale, Director of Pastoral Ministries for the Carolina Baptist Convention. For pastors, treatment can come at a high price. In some settings, however, it is becoming more acceptable for clergy to get the treatment they need. Depression is part of a human condition. Some people simply find ways to gracefully live with it. Like other chronic illnesses, you may not get over it right away. Experts at Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary suggest that pastors can help prevent, I said prevent depression, by engaging in a intentional replenishment weekly or monthly. Confiding in their spouse and seeking spiritual direction with another pastor who ministers to him or her. They should also establish boundaries and set realistic expectations. Jesus did not heal everyone, even as though it was in his power to do so. They should also establish boundaries. Pastors can also normalize, if you will, the problem of depression and dispel the idea that Christians are immune from depression. False, false, false. Research has shown that therapy is combined with medication. It's very beneficial. There's about 90% success rate, 90% from depression recovery among those who have sought help. Once you get past that point of help, you're on the way home to recovery. Every counselor begins with this question. So how long have you been suffering with depression? The truth is that I'm not sure. At times, it can seem like a lifetime. As a child, I was always told that when I was melancholy and that the description was true, is very quiet child. It's one of the symptoms. My first major bout with depression came my first freshman year in college, one man said. My parents were divorced and had been since I was 3. However, I was feeling a new pressure in my relationship with my dad, and I was not sure how to handle it. I became very discouraged when I realized that I was in a situation that I couldn't help. I needed help. I wanted help. I cannot remember most of what that counselor and I talked about. But I do know that God used that time to bring me back. To a higher level of normalcy at the end. As I look back at the time in college, I can clearly see times where God met me in very real and upright ways. Then I got married. The spouse knew that at times I struggled with discouragement, being down. But usually I rebounded quickly. We had been in church for 3 years when I hit my next major bout with depression. My youngest child was born a month early and saw, as we went through a year, saw various health issues with our children that ended in several different surgeries and hospital stays. To the point of exhaustion, I tried to care for 4 children, my spouse, our church, and homeschool, to go to a bazillion doctor's appointments. That's why it's so important to get professional, objective perspective on the problem of depression. But what if you see a counselor for several sessions and the cloud doesn't seem to be lifting? The definition of clinical depression or major depression episode is recognized by most clinicians as follows. Clinical depression is defined as a major episode as recognized by most clinicians. The essence feature of a major depressive episode is a period of at least 2 weeks where there is either a depressed mood or a loss of interest in nearly all activity. Well, it's almost time to close this session of Depression Hurts. I want to thank you for watching today. I'm also on YouTube.com on your PC to aid you in the battle against depression. It's been an honor knowing you're watching. If you'd like to be featured on my TV broadcast, just pick up the phone at 708-476-2145. That number is answered 24/7. Your story about personal depression just might help many out there who are suffering. Watchers are my #1 priority. Until next time, I'm Dr. Joe Allen of the New Hope Ministries, wishing you the best of mental health, and may God bless you all.